Hello everybody. Mark Plan Teach 2 is published today. I've not been on StreamYard for nearly a year, but I thought I would just take a moment to just share a little video and talk through all my kind of book journey as a teacher stroke blogger. So I'm going to come back to Mark Plan Teach 2 in a moment. And I want to rewind to 2011, 10 years ago. Starting as a blogger, sharing lots of ideas, and then Bloomsbury got in touch with me and asked me to write this little book. Now, unbeknownst to me, working in a very challenging school in Northwest London, I'd probably, lots of challenges going on. I'd probably attribute some of the decision making to what I'd probably call today a toxic school. So long story short, I was made, my position was made redundant, and I'd just started blogging, and I was about to become a father for the first time. And again, life gets in the way of teaching, as we know. I had a premature boy, so Freddie, born in 2011, took voluntary redundancy, and then found myself after 18 years of teaching without a job. And, having gone into teacher training from the age of 19, all I ever knew was teaching. So blogs and whatever else, and trying to make a living. Bloomsbury, who really liked my blog at the time, and this is going back to the days when there was very few people blogging. I had 10,000 followers on Twitter back then, and even there was a huge number. But I just started to write loads of ideas. So essentially they asked me to write a rebrand this series. So this was the first one. I really didn't like the title, particularly in a time when graded lessons were the thing. And so there I was at home writing lots of different ideas. What I loved about this book particularly was that you could write just a short idea and move on to another stage. So I guess what I loved about this was just coming up with the different types of lessons. Different topics, behavior, homework, those types of things, observation. So there's lots of ideas in here that I'm still quite proud of, but some are quite embarrassing at the same time. It's quite hard to write 100 ideas and make them of good quality. And these 100 idea books are really good today. So I look back at this book with a few fond memories, but also with a little bit of horror, only because it's probably my first book I ever wrote. Never done anything like this before. Plus, I was also facing the challenges of being without a job, a premature baby who was in hospital for 90 days, and not having a salary. And I guess this book, for me, holds a special part, not only for it being the first book, but it cleared lots of my debts and got me back into kind of enjoying teaching again. So that's 100 ideas. So this was published mid-2013. So that 2-year journey of writing this book at that stage of my life, which was incredibly challenging, and putting my ideas out publicly in print. When you write a blog, you can edit it, but when things are in print, you can't. So that was an interesting lesson learned. And looking back to this first edition, there are 1 or 2 grammatical errors and typos and things. You can see all my notes there as I've gone through and proofread the book cover to cover. And one thing I also know is when you're an author, you're always last to get a copy, which is interesting. So that was published in September 2013. It's still very popular with lots of people, strangely. I think it's sold 30,000 copies. And I remember actually quite... another lovely memory about this book, on all the books on all of Amazon, I think it reached number 27. So I don't know how many books they have listed, but it's easily 6 million. So that was quite an achievement. I remember the book trending next to Katie Price and Alex Ferguson for their memoirs. So the next book, fast forward to 2015, and I then wrote Teacher Toolkit. So this was my own book. So what I wanted to do with this book was I'd done lots of thinking about the Vitruvian man, or this kind of philosophy about perfection and if it's achievable. And I'd identified kind of 5 sections, as you can see here on the cover. And some of you may recognize this artist, Jean Julien, who did the famous Eiffel Tower image during a terrorist attack a number of years ago. So there's some great work in here. And also what I'll also point out is some of the graphics here is from a brilliant ex-student of my wife's called Polly Norton. She's on Instagram, Polly Nor, Pollnor. And what stands out with her work are these really interesting drawings with very nose. This is in the pub in NQT in a school in North London, Tottenham. Getting an early kind of lift with a colleague in at 6:30 in the morning, being absolutely shattered, trying to cope with my workload. And in my DT workshop, I remember very clearly I had a work sitting with my marking, and I was so tired some mornings. I used to have a little nap in there till about 8 o'clock. So that makes me laugh. But that's the life of a new teacher. So this book takes you through these 5 phases. Now, interestingly, these phases repeat as you take on a promotional job in middle leadership and school leadership and probably beyond. So the kind of first year of that been tough in knowing how to deal with all the usual challenges you have as a teacher. Then that phase 2, that year 2, when you've got your first year in your bag, and then you go through this kind of, I'm going to think more intelligently about my decisions, take a few risks, moving into that innovation stage where you're very comfortable, you've got your routines established, your relationships, and then you start to experiment either technology or routine or what have you. And then when you get to a place of that kind of risk stroke comfort, you start to be asked to share your ideas with others, and you get that degree of confidence, and you start to collaborate with other colleagues. And in a world of social media now, you do this online. So there's great space for NQTs today, newly qualified teachers, where they can share their ideas with others if they're in a place where they can do that safely without fear. And then, when we start to look for promotions, that kind of aspirational stage where we start to challenge ourselves, take on new responsibilities in the same school, or look for a promotion in another school. And then this repeats. So when you go into that middle leadership role, head of year, head of department, you go through that cycle again and into school leadership. So the book is designed, these 5 chapters, and kind of talking about this notion of perfectionism and whatever else. So the book covers those areas. If I just kind of pop through and kind of go into the kind of core things. So, that first year is that you can see how Mark Plan Teach started to evolve here in my own thinking, how all my 5-minute lesson plans started to evolve, all these kind of things that we try to deal with, as well as these kind of parts of our professionalism that are not necessarily obvious in our teacher training. It's something that we can only learn once we're in the staff room. And then year 2, managing time, picking up more workload, more kind of tasks to do, etc. And then starting to deal with the kind of wider areas of school life. And chapter 3, that risk taking, trying technology, doing things beyond your classroom into, whole school life, those types. And then, working with other teachers, dealing with parents, the wider community. And, then on to that kind of job hunt or taking on additional responsibilities. So this is a book that I really like. I'm really proud of it because I designed the whole book myself, which is a pin layout for Mark and Teach, just great teaching. So yeah, it's a really book that I'm proud of. One thing, I guess, from an author perspective is, contracts and things. I didn't have much of a say on the price, and I think this retails now at £18.99. Now, how many NQTs do you know that have a spare £20 to buy a book? So it hasn't sold as many as I would have hoped. However, in August, when new teachers join the profession, this is when it's most popular in terms of sales. So I love the inside. There's a kind of pull out here. I think you can rip this part off as a bookmark. I was really really wanted to have an index. You'll often find lots of books without indexes. You can see once I read the book in my hands, I've written a few mistakes, things like that. So a journey. So September 2015. Now, I just started my role as a deputy head teacher in a school in London at this time. And, you can see how Mark Plan Teach evolved. And then we had this little beauty. So I was very proud of this book. This started off as a teaching and learning policy in a school where went through a number of huge kind of tumultuous changes, lots of pressure externally and internationally, actually. School moving to a new building, and many great teachers not having any kind of clarity or coherence. And I guess what I looked to do was try and get a degree of consistency. And when this published in 2017, I mean, this work goes back to 2014 in the actual school itself. So 110 teachers building a marked plan teaching and learning policy on a weekly basis. Myself as a blogger, researcher, looking at blogs, articles, journals, etc. So we built this policy, and I guess I had the components. So all the chapter headings of Mark Plan Teach 1 are the kind of topics that we looked at as a school body of teachers. And I guess what I did as a blogger was I blogged the ideas to the rest of the world. So if you type in learning policy on my website, you'll see all those ideas shared, things that we were reading as a staff, things that we were talking about, and things that I was getting the feedback from teachers online. So 2014, this evolved, and it was incredibly popular. And the ideas online. So with the teaching and learning policy, which was probably about 20 pages of A4, I had the kind of skeleton framework already from my day-to-day work to publish it into a book. And some of you, many of you watching will probably know or have experienced my training firsthand. About 30,000 copies have sold, about 30,000 teachers, again, face-to-face. I've been given a copy in my teacher training sessions. So this book's kind of well-oiled and well-cited, etc. So I'm going to talk to you about what's different in Mark Plan Teach in a moment. But I'm very proud of this book. I guess what I did as a group of teachers, once this was published and an Ofsted came, and I guess for lots of different reasons, penalised the school. I was very frustrated with this. There's a lot of emotion in this as the book published after that particular episode. So that happened in January 2017. The book published in 2017, a really important part of my leadership career. After this book, so I then spent the next 2 or 3 years, so up until about recently, sharing this with teachers all around the world. During that time, as the website became very popular, some of my teacher bloggers were writing some great stuff on the website, and knowing all the different kind of book publishers that send things my way or ask me to write books for them, I approached John Catt. So we've got at the moment more to go. 2 were published by John Catt. This book written by Holly, and this book by Dr. Helen Woodley. Really, really great books for them to get published. So I was part of the kind of design. So I guess I worked in some kind of editor capacity here. But I did contribute to, writing maybe 5 or 10% of the book content. Really interesting book here from Holly on gender stereotypes, from her experiences as a primary teacher in Wales. So this has been really well received. Dr. Helen Woodley, Toxic Schools. I believe it's one of the first books on toxicity in education ever. So if you know anything else prior to 2018, let me know. But these 2 books came out kind of middle of the summer of 2018. Now this is Helen's research, which is an ethnography of 6 teachers and their experiences of toxic school cultures, a topic that we often brush under the carpet, but topic now, thanks to social media, has been talking a lot more about recently, which is really, really good to see. And hopefully we can get rid of some of this kind of bullying culture that exists in some parts of our profession. So a little bit of research, but lots of practical ideas. And this book's been quite popular, actually, with a lot of teachers probably either experiencing this or have gone through it, sadly, and want to unpick the process or the emotions that they've gone through. So that's those 2. Now, on my travels, almost there, everybody, on my travels to schools all around the world, but particularly from Just Great Teaching, I looked at trying to highlight not the best schools in the world, but I wanted to look at all the issues that all schools face and highlight some schools that do one of these areas really well. So on my travels, I identified 10 schools that I wanted to work with. A couple of them came my way, but there's the kind of little map. And a couple of kind of contacts with people in Northern Ireland. Collected about 10,000 bits of data, evaluated this. So I kind of share this in my keynotes. And basically each book is, I guess, under these headings with 5 ideas in each and then a case study. So if I just go to one example, let's pop to teacher well-being, which is probably a very, very important topic right now. So how the book's constructed, and again, it was my own design, along with Hannah Marston at Bloomsbury, is a kind of introduction. Why is it an issue across the sector? Looking at some of the latest research, teacher retention, teacher workload, those types of things. And then where the book then goes into is, once we give that kind of introduction and research overview, we then start to offer 5 practical solutions. So well-being promises, talking about mental health in your school. Third idea in here, whole school well-being policy. Does your school have a well-being policy? Not many schools do. Taking control of workload, and the final is the kind of well-being professional development. And then at the back of each chapter of the book is the school case study with contributions from the staff within the school, how they did it, how you can apply it, and then a nice little insight from a few voices outside of the school. So a lot of my kind of connections. So that's how the book is constructed. Now, this book, on reflection, I think is more designed towards school leaders, middle and school leaders, rather than NQTs. Another really interesting book for governors, people interested in education that don't work in education. And although the book's pitched that way, I wouldn't say it's been necessarily popular as others, but although things evolve and move on quite quickly, a lot of the issues in here, in my opinion, are still very relevant with what we're dealing with right now, with COVID, but also just things that are never going to change because of just how, the nature of what we do in the sector and the issues we all face. Good ideas are good ideas. The challenge is always translating them into your own context. So this was a book about sharing and raising the profile of the teaching profession. The next book, so back to one of my teacher bloggers, Hannah Beach. This was published in July. So during lockdown, she'd been writing it for about 2 years. Lots of commitments, my side and her side, was part of the delay. But this book, I thought it's a book that I wanted to write, actually. So John Catt happily published this, and the reason we went for 60-second, and we struggled with the cover and the idea and the concept, but Hannah on my blog was writing lots of 1-minute ideas. So again, I've contributed, I've helped construct the kind of book content and layout and how it would be designed. So let me just ping back to the contents page. You can kind of see the things in here. So all the kind of usual things, but what we wanted to do was, looking at all the analytics on my website, so 14 million readers, the average reading time is 1.5 minutes. I thought, well, let's write some ideas that can be digested in 60 seconds, and there's some follow-up links, references, whatever else, links to research, with a good introduction and a conclusion at the start of each section. So there's plenty of depth, but there's also plenty of stuff that teachers can take really quickly and apply it. And this has been super, super popular. So I'm not sure how many it's sold, but it's got, I think, 250 reviews on Amazon, which is pretty good. My life as an author, you really have to chase these reviews. People buy things because they can see other people talking about it. I can talk about contracts if people are interested and you want to add any comments. So I'm just checking those things now. So I can see Fabian has left a comment. Thanks, Fabian. So that's that. And then we've got this, which is published today. So I guess you're asking me what's different to the version 1.0, the first edition in 2017. So throughout lockdown, I've been planning this already, but lockdown gave me an opportunity to proofread the first version and update it. So I've updated the entire book, but I'd probably say maybe 20-25% of the book is entirely new. And it stems on all the work that I So Mark Plantich had lived in schools across the world, so 15 countries physically in the last 3 years, and learning what worked in primary, secondary, FE, virtual schools, PRUs, etc., and always seeking feedback from the teachers in the room. Would this idea work in this type of classroom, etc.? And after a year after the first book was published, Ollie Cav, who some of you will know, created lots of cartoons for me. I commissioned him to publish these cartoons. Now, these have always been around in my book, but I used to just give them to the teachers in the schools that I work with. So part of the new book is it includes this visual guide, and this follows the thinking behind 60-second CPD, which are the 1-minute ideas. So this is my what I'd advocate for teachers, the first port of call, the 1-minute summary, like what you see, then pop to the book for the detailed research, the thinking, and deeper explanation. So I hope this offers people a bit more depth, a bit more of an easier kind of CPD little magazine to have to your hand or to in your school staff room library. So I think you'll really enjoy having that. Mark Plantich too, I guess, some of the kind of key ideas which I'm going to explain in my book launch, my virtual book launch this evening, which will be interesting, is some of the key concepts I've learned from working as a researcher in my studies at Cambridge University. So some of those new ideas that I now share with school leaders is almost was a eureka moment to me 2 or 3 years ago, but they're proven still to be a eureka moment for many others. So those ideas are shared in here, and I'm sure it will be just as popular and hopefully will suit many teachers in a wide variety of schools, in a wide variety of countries. I mean, I just spoken to a head teacher in London this morning and another head teacher in Botswana in Africa. So it's great, the world of social media and things, we can share ideas. I've always said that teachers, experienced teachers, must share complex ideas with the profession. So this started off as a blog for me. So now this is book number 8, 5th for Bloomsbury, 3 for John Catt, with another 2 in the pipeline for Bloomsbury, 1 on questioning and 1 on memory. And the other for John Catt is on parents and revision. But I'm in no rush to get those out because for people that are interested in writing a book, I'll probably say, everyone has a different workload, but for me, it's probably a 2-year process. Thinking, all on my website, you can find all this, detailed spreadsheets, online hyperlinks, sharing documents, feedback, things, constantly proofreading. I guess from a publisher perspective, choose your publisher wisely. You need a good support team, someone that's going to help promote your book, someone who can get all the graphics together, gives you a little bit of a budget to spend to help promote the book. From a DT teacher perspective, the quality of the cover, the glue, the weight of the paper, all these things matter. You can see and feel these things in books, and it does make a difference. So choose your publishers wisely. Books don't cost a lot to produce. They get a huge markup, and you'd be surprised. I'm no J.K. Rowling, but the kind of cut that authors get isn't enough to kind of retire. But in all of those things, it's flattering to share your ideas. It's even more flattering that others want to buy them. And as ever, I hope it makes a difference to many teachers. So that's Mark Plantich, which is published today. So you've got loads of stuff there. Any questions, ping them through, support@teachertoolkit.co.uk. Thanks for watching. And I may see 1 or 2 of you this evening on my live book launch with Vikas Pota, Vijita Patel, Andrea Zafaroku, and Professor Andy Hargreaves. And I'm going to be giving away a few copies to people participating. So get in touch if you've missed the link or the ticket. It's still not too late. 8 p.m. tonight, GMT. And I'll speak to you there. Otherwise, thanks for watching.